Welcome back, guys, to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I am fortunate to have Karl Omar Lawrence with me today. He is the author of three books. They're poetry books, and is an entrepreneur who does creative writing workshops to teach kids about writing and entrepreneurship. And he's from the Bronx in New York. Carl, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, set the scene for us. Talk about where you grew up, maybe your family situation, and what you were like as a kid.
What if I told you one night I saw lights? What if that night I made a wish, took a vow, whispered this promise that if I see stars all my life people told me didn't exist? What if I found out for myself what else is out there outside of this inner city? I had a vision, a mindset for success, and a list of aspirations. Barack Obama wrote me a letter saying, remember the founding promise of this nation. If you reach for your highest goals, in the process, you will inspire others to do the same. Though right now it seems impossible to win, you can face the odds if David faced off against Goliath, a giant twice his size. Right then I decided if all men are made of the same carbon, if my grandmother came to this country without a mother or a father and she didn't quit, no matter how much mud she had to shovel, if I could do things differently, what's never been done in the history of this family, yes, if I can, get rich off of business, make an impact that will live on, like Phil Knight, Bill Nike, Microsoft, Bill Gates, if Jobs and Wozniak did it from basement, if Malcolm X did it after being in prison, Nelson Mandela made it, if Viktor Frankl survived the concentration camp, then certainly I can do it, like Bebop did it, like hip hop did it. I said if rappers make millions off words, and this craft is my passport to explore the planet. If I give it my best, map out a plan and take action, practice confidence and conviction. If I hop on this train and start talking, if I see somebody blink or cough in my direction, if I stay focused in preparation, take these thoughts in my brain and write them down on paper. If I get creative and make a book, put books in this bag. If when push comes to shove, I put that bag on my back. In the black of the night with the stars still in the sky, I was grinding to sell 1,000 copies independent because I made a wish. I took a vow and whispered this promise. That's how I introduced myself.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. It's quite the.
Yeah. Now go
Um,
ahead, please.
yeah, yeah. So, do you want to just set the scene for
Yeah.
where you grew
Um,
up and your family situation and things of that
sure.
nature?
I'm a first generation American. My family consists of immigrants from the rural countryside of East Jamaica. Our lifetime in this country starts in the late 80s to early 90s. It was my grandmother, really, and her determination and resolve to immigrate 1,500 miles away to a new place where she didn't know anybody at the age of 39, 40 years old to begin a new life. I may be writing books now, but I have a half brother who is illiterate and doesn't know how to read. And so that's a glimpse into what my life might be like if I was just born 1,500 miles away. I grew up in the Bronx, like I said. It has the highest poverty and the highest unemployment in New York. So when you're in a poor or working class neighborhood, what you're observing a lot of the time is a lot of social dysfunction, the habits of failure and retrogression. And so if you grow up being intellectually curious, if you grow up being passionate about ideas, passionate about learning, having a creative urge, a creative itch inside you to write, to draw, to read, to think, to be interested in markets, free markets, business, then you're definitely going to be an outsider. You're not going to find a lot of people that share those same interests in common with you. And so what you have is a kind of cultural inertia and stagnation that is around you that can depress that inner drive and passion that you have. And my story is a story of somebody resisting and going against that inertia to become the best version of myself and to inspire other people who are in similar circumstances that they could also do the same, that you're not a product of your environment. Your environment is a product of you when you become aware of your creative capacity and the agency that you have to do the things that you want to do in life.
Can you so talk a little bit about what you were like as a kid, and maybe the environment you're talking about?
Sure.
As a kid, what maybe were your aspirations based off of the environment?
I mean, I've always wanted to be radical. The name of my brand is Rich Radical, and what I mean by that is the rich part is the freedom that comes from wealth, from having assets, from having FU money as they call it, and radical is what you have to be to make up the gap between where you are and where you want to go. I was mischievous, but a good student, polite, respectful. Again, I'm a person raised primarily a lot of the time by my grandmother, by my mother. You know, regular Christian kind of respectful values. But when you get into your rebelliousness as a teenager, you don't realize how you can squander the benefits of being born in this country. There were times that I hung out with people who were in gangs, even as I was going to school, just wanting to be accepted. But I won't over exaggerate that portion of my life, really. I've mostly been a person to be an only child, a loner, somebody that's by myself, and with all that time that you have on your hands, I didn't get into social media until I was 18, really. So I spent all that time reading. I spent all that time writing and practicing on my craft. I didn't get to be great at what I do by accident. I put a lot of time into it. And when you read enough books, you decide that I want to create my own, because this internal world inside of you, it develops as you read about the internal worlds of other people. And then you say, okay, this person, Malcolm X, Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass, they've transformed themselves through the practice of literacy, through becoming eloquent and articulate of their ideas, and that's what I'm going to do too. Uh, Recreational hobbies, I like running track, boxing, all of that kind of competitive stuff. And so I bring that same kind of energy to the activities that I do now.
Can you talk about, your Jamaican background a little bit more and how influential that has been or hasn't been on your life?
Uh, I think that there is some influence. Jamaicans speak in a very musical way. The vernacular of Jamaican people, it's rhythmic. It's almost like a poetry or a rap that's coming out, even in their colloquialisms and the way that we speak on an everyday basis. So I guess you kind of you absorb that, the parables, the metaphors, the way that the colorful language, the phrases, all of that kind of gets bled into your DNA a little bit. You look at the art form of hip hop; it emerged out of the Jamaican dancehall DJ culture, with Jamaican DJs reciting lyrics and poems over the music that they were playing at parties, and then evolved from there. Um, but there's also a culture of ignorance as well. There's also that inertia and sometimes resistance to growth, resistance to learning, resistance to new ideas that you have to battle against as well. I'm not sure if that's something that's exclusive to Jamaican people or if it's really just a working class, kind of thing. People are set in their ways. They're accustomed to the status quo of how they already think, how they already do things, how they eat, and they don't want to change. But then when you look as a youth, you're 11 and 12 years old, and see that the way things are done, the way people think, the way people spend their money and don't save it or invest it, the way people eat leads to failure, it leads to mediocrity, it leads to bad outcomes, then you take it as an example of what not to do. And then you decide to go a different way in your own life path. But I'm inspired by people like Marcus Garvey. That was inspirational to me. I take a little bit of that. So
Can you talk about may,
that's pretty much it from me. Otherwise,
can you talk about
no, go ahead,
maybe
please.
the like first time you started writing and where your love of poetry started?
Let's see. I started writing when I was 11. It was a class assignment to write in journals in my English class. And since previously I had never had an outlet to express my intimate thoughts and feelings, Now that I had finally found one, a lot poured out of me. I got positive feedback from my teacher, and I didn't really need much else after that. I pretty much kept it going from 11 onward. My soul cried the first time that I wrote. I had a lot on my mind. It became something that was therapeutic. In the absence of having people around you that you could speak honestly and with and express vulnerability with, poetry, writing, art, creativity is oftentimes an outlet for people, and it was an outlet for me.
When do you, the three books that you've written, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the themes in the poetry you've written?
Sure. Can I show you one of them?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
this is this is my most recent one. It's called Omar, Man of Words. Omar is my middle name, and I title it Omar because I'm on my second life. I believe in reinvention. I believe that you could remake what you think. You could remake how you see yourself and radically alter for the better the course of your life. The themes of my work revolve a lot around the possibility of change that is imminent and available for anybody who becomes self aware and makes a choice to take responsibility for bringing about that change within themselves, within their family, within their community. I, I tell a David and Goliath story of overcoming tremendous odds. I reflect on social issues, uh, technology addiction that many people in our generation experience. I reflect on social and economic issues that I see in the black community. And really, I keep my focus on telling authentic stories that provoke powerful thoughts and inspire deep emotions. So, anything that a human being could feel, anger, sadness, happiness, joy, the thrill of the hunt, the thrill of the chase, love, romance, forgiveness, all of these different phases and patterns within the human experience. I create a story, I tell a story about it. And so when I was 16 years old, I can remember being evicted from my apartment. I can remember passing out in the hallways of my high school from fatigue and exhaustion and not eating. I can remember going to the pawn shop to pawn jewelry and to pay bills. I can remember searching on the ground for quarters, nickels, and dimes to go to the local convenience store to get toiletries. And now I'm a successful author. I'm powerful. Professors at colleges and universities read and respect my work and respect me. I get invited places to share my thoughts, to share my opinions, to inspire people. It's not a time that I sit down with somebody meeting them for the first time that they don't leave with their spirit quickened by what I say to them. And so there was a time in my life where the possibility of being who I am now and having the prospects that I have now was as remote to me as California is from Australia. But I'm here. And so basically my poems trace the arc of how did I make that change? How have I overcome and how do I continue to overcome the challenges that beset me on all sides in life and to become again the best version of myself, to become an inspiration, to become a model of what the human mind, of what the human imagination can do when it is applied to its fullest capacity.
That's awesome. That's terrific. What do you
Thank you very
think
much.
for you, you know, talk about being in some tough places. What do you think made the change for you personally? How did you go from searching for quarters on the ground to, publishing a book?
Hard work, honestly. I think that a person, if if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a person who is lost and who is confused, I think the first step is to become self-aware. Just say you were uh, a spendthrift. You didn't know what to do with your money. Every time you get a dollar, you spend 99 cents out of it. Well, the first step on your path towards financial independence would be making an audit of yourself. Where does my money go? Because where your money goes is reflective of how good you are or how bad you are with money. And so when it comes to the realm of the personal as opposed to the financial, I would say for a person to audit yourself, where do you put your time? Where do you put your attention? What kind of people do you surround yourself with? What kind of information are you taking in? So, if you don't put anything good in your mind, nothing good is going to come out of it. So if you absorb is garbage in, garbage out. And so you want to also audit yourself to find some strengths. There are different forms of intelligence. There is no one form of intelligence. People are smart in different ways. People are talented in different ways. So you can't be Jay Z or Beyonce because Jay Z is Jay Z and Beyonce is Beyonce and Omar is Omar. But be you. Strive to be better than you were yesterday, today, and tomorrow better than you are today. You identify a strength that you have, a set of interests that you have, the kind of intelligence that you have. You want to assess these things, and then you go to work on developing them, having a handful of habits and activities that you do on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis that improve you just a little bit every day. So that might be 10 or 15 or 20 minutes of meditation. That might be an hour of reading. That might be exercise. It might be going to a new place that you haven't gone before and striking up a conversation with an interesting stranger. And little by little, there's something called compound interest, and it works with money invested into the stock market, but it also works with habits and personal transformation. The little reading that you do now, it stacks on top of the reading that you do the next day and the next day after that, and all of a sudden your vocabulary is improved, your intelligence is developed. You feel more confident when articulating yourself. That changes the scope of your life. You know, so that's kind of my thinking process of how to go about attacking these problems, no matter where in life you are. I just think it's very important to understand the fact that you're not defined by where you've come from, or what is around you, or even what other people might say about you. To a certain extent, you could become greater than that. You could overcome it, and you could remake yourself, reinvent yourself. Hmm.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about Jay Z and Beyonce there.
Yeah.
Were there, in the formation to where you've gotten to mentally now, were there other influences? Um,
Absolutely. Uh,
and maybe even talk about their influence as well.
oh, of course. Uh, Jay Z, Master P, E40, all of these people who took an illegitimate lifestyle that they were living. They had an independent approach to the business of music. They built up a product, a company that was viable, and then they entered into partnerships with larger corporations and became wealthy from that. They became rich from that. That's inspirational to know that at a certain age somebody was on a dirty street corner selling drugs, to then graduate to being an executive, to being someone that's known and influential. That's certainly inspirational. Uh, so hip hop, I have my criticisms of it, but that's the positive aspect that I draw from it. I'm inspired by Thomas Sowell. That's a black conservative economist who operates out of the Hoover Institution at Stanford, I believe. I'm inspired by the great entrepreneurs, by the Steve Jobs, by the Richard Branson. That's Virgin for anybody listening. Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Records. He's responsible for that. I'm inspired by Phil Knight. If you've ever worn a pair of Nikes, it's because of him. I'm inspired by great athletes, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, great musicians, Tupac, Bob Marley, Curtis Mayfield, Marvin Gaye, Miles Davis, John Coltrane. And so I take little pieces from everybody, I take and then I added to myself. Of course, I got to shout out Malcolm X, of course, Booker T. Washington, Frederick Douglass. These were men who may have been born illiterate, were maybe criminals, were poor or slaves at one point in their life, and then words created turned them into powerful statesmen, powerful orators, powerful leaders. And so Martin Luther King, all of those people. So people black and white, old and young, contemporary and from the past, antiquity, are all a source of inspiration. I'm inspired by Socrates. They said, "We don't like what's coming out of your mouth. Take it back." And he said, "No, it's true. I
Yeah.
don't recant. I said exactly what I said. And if you want me to drink this hemlock, then fine. But it just exposes your own hypocrisy." And so, as a poet, as somebody that articulates, that communicates, at times I'm going to say things that people don't like. And so, the courage that a Socrates had to stand firm in his principle because he knew that he was right, that there was merit and validity to what he was saying, something that's deeply inspirational to me. And so those are some of my influences and how I kind of the collage of people, who I look up to.
Yeah. You've already accomplished a good amount in your young life. Three books. Um, what do you hope to, in your vision for the future? What else do you think you'll be doing?
Well, check this out. Books were my entryway point. See, when you're developing a brand, I think that the key is to distinguish yourself as being different from the competing alternatives that are in the marketplace. You want laundry detergents, you go to market to buy some. You trust the brand name of Tide because they've distinguished themselves in your mind as opposed to everyone else. So we live in a generation where everybody is making content. Every other person that you run into has a mixtape or has something that they want you to buy or that they're advertising on YouTube. You want to carve out a place in people's mind as being unique and different. So that's why I started with a book as opposed to starting with music because now people could know that okay, my mission is actually to inspire you, to impact you first, and entertain you second. Whereas a rapper's mission is to entertain you first, and whether you're inspired or impacted or taught anything is an irrelevant question, really. And so transitioning from just the books and the spoken word to the category of music, recording these poems that until now people have just read on paper. It's a much bigger market. It's so much easier to reach a greater number of people that way, and also to give vindication to the people that have been following me for all of these years that I've been putting out my books. You upload your music to Spotify, Apple Music, people anywhere in the world can listen to it and enjoy it and find meaning from it. And then growing that as an independent business model. You start with some music, you get people's attention. Maybe you put a shirt on them. Maybe you start a maybe you have a clothing brand to complement the ideas and the philosophy that's in the music. Maybe you go on tour, and then you begin to monetize. People are inspired by you. They stream the music for free, but they choose to pay for your products. They choose to contribute to it. Now you have a business. This is a real business, an independent business. You build it up. Now you take profits from that and you want to diversify it and invest it into other markets because music is a short window. You're only going to be interesting or compelling to people in music, but for so long before they move on to somebody else. And so that next thing for me is definitely commercial real estate development and education, which are two values that I hold very highly in my heart. You know, when you look at the social and the economic issues that befuddle the least of the black community, the most vulnerable, the most unemployed, the most uneducated. When you look at solutions, because that's what I'm about. I'm about solutions and not problems. You really want people to develop skills. You really want people to develop competencies that will allow them to compete in a complex and ever-changing global economy. That comes from a good education. And commercial real estate, when people are educated, when their neighborhoods are safe, when their families are intact, Now you want to build up the commerce, you want to build up the entrepreneurship, you want to provide spaces for intelligent people, for young geniuses to meet with one another and connect and start the next Apples and Microsofts. You know, we have a lot of human capital that is being wasted in inner cities because people may not have the opportunity to express that genius or that intellectual passion that they have inside of them. Commercial real estate, the opening of stores, businesses, spaces for people to learn, for people to engage with each other, for people to connect. That's what that's about. So that's what I would do. That's what's next for me after books and music and media, culture creation, content creation, all of that. That's really where I see myself heading.
That's awesome. That's a
Thank you very much.
got a good plan here. You talked a little bit about education. You're already doing creative writing workshops um, with like the New York Public Library. Do you want to
Yes,
talk
sir.
a little bit more about that?
Yes. So it's entrepreneurship on its face, literacy on its face is not the most interesting thing to people uh, at times, but these are the very devices that turn poverty into affluence and ignorance into knowledge and violence into peace. Literacy, words. You know, if I have a disagreement with you, instead of getting a gun and shooting you, we can talk it out because we have the instrument of language. Now imagine a person that has no command of language, that doesn't know how to articulate themselves. Then you would get violence. And where you don't have entrepreneurship and markets, you have people who are in poverty. And so the poetry, I use poetry to engage the attention of people to get them to listen, and then I turn the question back on them. I ask people difficult and challenging questions. Who are you? What do you want to do? What are the challenges that you're facing? How can you overcome them? And then I get them to put it in their own words, to rewrite, to reprogram your mind, deprogram yourself of the narrative you're believing now that has you stagnant, that has you stuck, that has you powerless and voiceless, and write in your own words a new narrative, one in which you have agency, one in which you're prepared to take responsibility. And now, what I want you to do is to stand up in front of the group and to articulate it out loud, to commit to it verbally in front of other people. And so that's more or less, how the flow of my workshops go. I've been in many different communities in the New York public library system uh, doing these workshops, and I also, since the onset of COVID-19 and the pandemic, I've been offering them virtually as well for people in any city, any state, any country, really, to join in.
I think that's great. I'm curious to know, uh, are the male kids in the room surprised, or have you faced any, not backlash, but, you know, negativity from even your inner circle about being a man who talks about feelings?
Let's see. Well, if there is backlash or criticism, usually people don't venture their opinions to me out loud. Maybe they think it privately to themselves. Talking about your feelings or being expressive and artistic is not looked at as something that's masculine, I suppose, or something that's cool. But I'm not really concerned about the opinions of people who I don't respect. And I think the most masculine thing that you could do is to communicate and to be expressive. I don't find any masculinity in being a silent tree and standing by and not having anything to say and not having an active mind. And if you don't process your feelings, if you don't ever articulate them, then you go home and you beat your wife, or you drink to the end of the bottle every night,
Yeah.
or you have other all of this. Men were taught to be stoic and to push our feelings way down into the pit of our stomachs and not tell anybody, and that's how you end up with cancer. So I don't even talk about my feelings honestly with people on a daily basis, but that's what I have the art for. That's what I have the poetry for. That's what I have the music for. And were it not for that, I would go insane. I would be paralyzed with anxiety and depression and fear and doubt and all of these other things. So you have to get out at some point, or else it's gonna kill you.
Yeah, that's a lot of good points there.
Yes.
You took a trip to Thailand. Can you talk about
But
that?
yeah, so it just showed me the power of culture because I stayed at a Buddhist monastery there for a week, and the cultural values there, they respected peace over violence. The most peaceful, the most equanimous person, the most understanding person was respected, was revered by the group. You were encouraged to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and meditate to the sunrise, to walk through a garden peacefully, and to appreciate the trees and the sunlight on you, to just take in the moments itself. And when you eat in silence for the first 20 minutes and enjoy slowly and mindfully the food that is on your plate. And you're in an environment like that for long enough, you conform to it. But it's positive. It has a positive effect. And I just saw when I went to that temple, I went to that monastery. I said, I want to create a monastery, you know, but in the inner cities of America, but not just a monastery of mindfulness, but a monastery of entrepreneurship, of literacy, of self-development, of growth, of the ascertaining of positive cultural habits. And so it starts with maybe a leader, with maybe a creed, a set of values, and then people see that it works. This works. These the value of violence, of instant gratification, of being illiterate, that leads to failure. It leads to prison. It leads to death. These values over here, literacy, entrepreneurship, self-development, and all of that, it leads to wealth. It leads to happiness. It leads to peace. It leads to security. If you're at the crossroads, which one do you want to choose? Now that you've made your choice, once you've made your choice, but you're free to choose failure or success, come to the spot. Come to the temple, so to speak. Come to the monastery, so to speak, so that you can clean yourself, so that you can develop yourself, become a better person, become a better citizen, become a better thinker, become a better employee, become a better owner, become a better investor, so on and so forth. That's where my thoughts drift to.
Can you also you have a brand called Countercultural? Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Uh-huh. So the natural next step when people are engaged with your music is to offer them a way to show it, and that's where apparel comes in. And while I'm recording my music now, uh, apparel and clothing is maybe 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months down the line, but it's definitely a next step. But what countercultural means, or what it will mean, is if it's the culture of your area, of your family, of wherever you're at, to be ignorant, then you choose knowledge. If it's the culture to be violent, then you choose peace. If it's the culture to be closed minded, then you choose to be open minded. It means to defy a negative set of norms that surround you and suffocate your potential, and to strive to be better, to be different, to be uniquely you, but in a meaningful way. Because anyone can be different. You can just put on a pink nose and a purple wig and paint yourself as a clown, and you'll be different from other people, but it's not relevant. That would be more so attention seeking. What I mean is the transformation of ourselves from the inside out. And so, rich, radical, kind of cultural, it's the same kind of concept, really, but you want to give people an opportunity to wear their philosophy, because fashion and clothing is a way that people reflect what they believe and what they feel on the inside. But all of this is in stages, all of this is in steps. My personality, I get ahead of myself. I put the cart before the horse. So I'm trying to learn to do one thing at a time. Focus on focus on the book when you're writing the book. When the book is done, then you focus on the music. When the music is done, then you focus on the marketing. When that's done, then you monetize in other ways. You offer people clothing. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah. I know you did one at the beginning, but do you want to do a poem from your most recent book
Sure, of course.
or reading?
Good. This one is called Breaking News. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister of the Nazi Party, I believe, said if lies repeated often enough, it becomes truth to people. But I paraphrase, and so I'm going to talk to you about propaganda. Good morning, America. News flash, news flash, new brand new breaking news. There's been another break-in somewhere out there over the rainbow in an inner city neighborhood that no one knows about. Wait, this just in: violent rape caught on tape. Airheaded redhead girl found dead in yet another head scratching jigsaw puzzle case that will likely remain unresolved. Case closed. The patriarchy strikes again. Extra, extra, breaking news, new brand new. Hurry, run to the newsstands and read about it in the newspapers. Then later turn on the television and hear all about it all day long, day in and day out. Hear about how the country is now spiraling out of control. COVID-19 coronavirus induced unemployment is skying high. Welfare lines are lining the streets everywhere you go. Every day hear everything but the truth. Hear about the fear of a terrorist attack from a crazed hijacker strapped with a bomb and ready to blow his body up into little bits of shrapnel. Hear the latest sensationalized tales of racially motivated hate crimes committed by police, riots in the street, cities burning up in a fire, kidnappings, stabbings, planned conspiracies, corporate racketeering, and the disappearance of jobs. Find out what's up with Jack in a Box and a Beanstalk, Mickey Mouse and Donald Trump, prices up and down on the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, jackass or elephants. Pick a pandering politician with visions of Pollyanna, eager to play you for a fool with word games and ambiguous claims, promises of manna from the heavens, aims, plans, and phony $2 bills designed to have good blue-collar folks but destined to fail. Packed jails are stacked to the top with the black bodies, inflation rising, gun sales soaring, porous borders and foreign entanglements are all our breaking news. Viewers, stay tuned for an exclusive inside scoop on who is effing whom, for who, over what, where, why, when, and how. Allow yourself to be sedated and subdued daily by the confusing and contradictory, often dictatorial dictums of Toms, Dicks, Harry Potters, Mary Poppins, and Al Sharpton, until your brain shrinks to the size of a popcorn kernel. Coming up next, the weather.
That's good. That's good.
You gotta add some
That's,
humor, man.
yeah,
We
yeah.
live in a crazy time.
That's good. Um, as we get towards the end, was there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to talk about?
Uh, well, you plan to put my contact information
Yeah, yeah,
probably
yeah.
in
I'll
the
ask you about that. That'll be one of my final questions. But
okay,
um,
yeah. But I think we covered most of what's important to talk about. I think so.
cool, cool. So, Carl, I just want to acknowledge you. I think that you know you didn't talk a ton about it, but like a lot of people in the world, at one time or for a little bit, you were in some tough places, and
Absolutely.
and through will and through your reading and however you did it, you got yourself out and um, are really pushing yourself. Um, publishing 3 books and holding workshops for kids about poetry, about entrepreneurship, um, and trying to change the narrative of
Yes.
you know of just uh, the play like just I guess Bronx and overall everywhere around the world. Just change the
Yes.
narrative. So I just want to acknowledge you for doing some great work. I hope that people are inspired by listening to this. If they want to support you, can you talk about how they can do that?
Absolutely. So I offer my books on richradical.com. So that's RICHRADICAL.com. That's where my catalog is. If you would like to follow me on social media, I'm most active on Instagram. My Instagram is Mr. Mr. Rich Radical. And I may be aggressive, and intimidating in my poetry and delivery at times, but I'm a nice guy. I don't bite. Feel free to reach out to me, talk, all of that, and more announcements, more content, more great work on the way, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on, Carl.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.